Okay, you are officially in the pre-show.
Okay. A little pre-show. I'm going to start with a little show jingle. So reserve your judgments to the end. We want Austin the auditor. We want Austin the auditor. He's gonna find every nickel that they stole. We want Austin the auditor. They've been stealing nickels from the people. The patronage class are extorting us. That's why we're rooting for Austin the auditor. He's gonna find every nickel that they stole.
All three platforms have accepted your stream.
That's good to hear. My jingle didn't get us banned from the internet.
Are you ready to start your show?
I am ready.
Okay, you know what to do. When it says on the air, you're on the air.
Yep. Thank you.
Oh, wrong one. This one.
Hello, Think Twice Radio, and welcome to another episode of the Buffalo Doge Show, where we audit City Hall because no one else is. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing tomorrow's Common Council agenda and then talking about this week's Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency meeting on Thursday, where they're going to lie to us about clawing back the Bray Miller funds. And then at the end, we'll have some light-hearted analysis on the Buffalo Bills salary cap situation. I figure since the Buffalo Bills are getting nearly $1 billion of taxpayer money, the Buffalo Bills are a government issue, and that's why we need to audit them for efficiencies in their salary cap. So that's a little overview of today's show. For those of you who haven't watched, my name is Matthew Austin, and I am the auditor. So I am the City of Buffalo's former and terminated Open Data Analytics Project Coordinator, and I do this weekly show where I just kind of go in depth into some of the things going on in City Hall this week. I think there's not enough kind of local coverage. I think we've seen local and legacy media really starting to die out, and I think there's a lot to cover, and there is. So hopefully, I started to do this every Monday where I'm going deep diving into Buffalo City Hall and specifically the Common Council meeting. So those are a couple things. I think I'm going to go through the Common Council agenda. So for those of you who may not be familiar, the Buffalo Common Council are the 9 elected officials. They're essentially the board of directors of the city. And every Tuesday, they have council meetings. So they rotate between regular meetings and then committee meetings. So tomorrow is a regular meeting where they're going to have a bunch of different things on the agenda. But we're going to go through, their agenda and talk about kind of some of just kind of translate what City Hall is doing. So let's start. And this is our logo. This is the Department of Government Efficiency Buffalo. And we're not affiliated with the National Doge effort, but very much taking inspiration for this current moment of time where I think people are wanting more and more government efficiency and watchdogs. That's hoping we do. So as always, if you're watching the live stream, drop a comment. Be glad to comment in real time, or if you're watching later, just drop a comment in the video, and I always enjoy seeing what people think about what's going on. So let's turn to the Common Council agenda. So tomorrow is Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. Let's see if I can get this centered here. Let's audit them. So every week, the Common Council, they post this agenda. So let's go through it, I think. There's lots of items on this agenda. Tomorrow, even maybe more than usual. They have lots of items on here. So they'll go through all these pretty rapidly. But let's kind of start at the top and work our way down. So the first thing that appears on the agenda, both the mayor and the controller, is the amended 2025 capital budget. So you'll see this as item 1, and then the controller actually has it down here too as the Certificate of Necessity capital budget amendment. So let's open these up. So item 25-1 25-130 from the controller, and then 25-119 is with the mayor. So these were both related to essentially changing budget lines in the capital budget. And the capital budget, right, the city has a couple different things. The city has a budget, which the fiscal year for the city runs from June or July 1st to June 30th. So we're just past the halfway point of the city's regular budget, which is essentially, talking about expenses, departmental expenses. My understanding of the capital budget is actually like infrastructure improvements. And this actually runs from the calendar year. So it actually starts in January 1st to December 30th, from my understanding. My understanding is essentially it's the capital budget, or it's kind of budgeting for infrastructure improvements. So what we have going on tomorrow is we have this letter that we've got from the comptroller and the acting mayor because we don't currently have a mayor. The mayor's position has been vacated by who the people voted. So essentially what they're doing is they have the Department of Public Works and Engineering. They've essentially, what they did in the previous, or in the adopted capital budget, was they allocated certain amounts for each council district. Each council district had about 500,000, or in the hundreds of thousand range. So each district had a budgeted amount for capital improvements by budget. And after watching the caucus meeting, what they're doing, and they didn't really, they did give a little explanation, but they're kind of rolling that all up into just a citywide infrastructure. They talked about in the caucus meeting that they're going to be providing the council updates. But what it seems is, instead of having to offer like 9 different bonds, or it just makes the budgeting easier to kind of have citywide infrastructure improvements. That's what they've publicly stated. Then they also have this 100,000 for the King Urban Life Center, which I think this was kind of a repercussion of the American Rescue Plan. So for those of you that, or just to bring everybody up to speed, but at the end of last calendar year, so December 2024, the city had to allocate the American Rescue Plan dollars, which were kind of the pandemic funding that the federal government gave to the city of Buffalo. So the federal government gave the city $330 million plus in money for the pandemic, for economic stimulus. And at the end of the year, last year was the last day that they could obligate or put those in budget lines. And one of the many things that were wrong with the city's allocation of those dollars was money that was originally invested for economic impacts and infrastructure kind of ended up getting scrapped and just rolled into revenue replacement. And that was one of the biggest complaints. So this King Urban Life Center, I think, is kind of, I don't want to say retribution, or it's kind of making that whole, because I think the King Urban Life Center roof was one of the things that got taken out of the American Rescue Plan. So they're kind of just adding this King Urban Life Center $100,000 into the budget. So essentially the capital budget, to summarize, they're taking money that was allocated per district and kind of rolling that into citywide infrastructure. They say they're going to be the same, but I think this gives them a little more flexibility, and I think we should monitor this too, because this is just an opportunity to perhaps invest in certain areas of the city and leave other areas of the city not invested, right? Because when you're just investing in the city as a whole, you can invest in certain pockets, where if you're dividing that up into 9 equal districts, and I could go on about how the districts aren't perfect because a lot of them have been gerrymandered, but just a way to kind of make, the thing they said was making the bonding of those items easier. And there's a spreadsheet here, and it's kind of humorous. This is the city elected officials, and they attached to this amended capital budget like a scanned Excel sheet, and then they have these marks here. So I think this is the controller just scribbling in King Urban line, adding a line there, and then just this hand scratch, chicken scratch on a Excel sheet photocopied. Is just kind of, there's no explanation here. It's just it's kind of right. This is City Hall. What they're doing is just kind of chicken scratching different numbers in. And this is a city with around $600 million in revenue. This is kind of how they're presenting this to the public. But you'll see this is capital budget. So essentially just outlines just different infrastructure investments the city is making. So it has police department, so upgrades to certain districts, police vehicles. They have demolitions for DPIS and just kind of the physical things in our city. There are lots of restorations and infrastructure improvements that go into the capital budget. That's a whole separate process than the city's budget, which I believe February was the day. So essentially the city hall behind the scenes is working on the actual budget. And I think the department heads had to have their budgets in. But yeah, this is again appears for the controller's office is 25-130. So just the comptroller kind of having a comment on the actual capital budget. So just kind of a repeat thing. But that was one of the big things that came up in today's council meeting or caucus. So let's go through here again. I guess some other things right off the bat is these appointments to the Buffalo Arts Commission. So there's several appointments here to the Buffalo Arts Commission, which if you go to Ecode 360, let's see if I can Google it here. Ecode 360 Buffalo. That's the Ecode 360 Buffalo is the site that has the city of Buffalo's like charter and code on it. So the Buffalo Arts Commission, which I'll search here, Arts Commission. Let's see if there's any information here on the Arts Commission, but I think the Arts Commission, there's a bunch of boards that I'm familiar with that are like in the charter that says the charter has to have, but that aren't functional in reality. One example that I know of is the city's Civil Service Appeals Board. So the city's charter, which is kind of like the constitution of the city, it outlines, for example, the Civil Service Appeals Board, which is a board that under the charter should be operating, but just isn't because a lot of the corruption and just incompetence that's been going on in City Hall. There's many boards and stuff that aren't functional, even though the charter prescribes that those need to be done. So let's take a look at these Art Commission items. This is chapter 6, section 6-26 of the city code. So yeah, it's up to the mayor to appoint these people, and they're appointing 5 different people to the Buffalo Arts Commission. So that's something that's on the agenda tomorrow. Let's keep moving through these. There's some, the controller's cash flow report is on here. So every month the city controller, they just post a cash flow report that kind of gives the council an update on the cash flows of the city. So let's take a look at that, because this is something that's pretty standard. And it's actually pretty important, although it kind of hurts your eyes at first look. But yeah, just a cash flow report that shows actual and projected amounts for things like cash and investments. And also the Board of Education, because the city of Buffalo, I believe, they're actually like the fiscal sponsor. There's certain areas where the Board of Education overlaps with the city of Buffalo. And then it has more detailed, right? Each of these in the city budget is a different budget line in the city's budget for example, property class. One thing I'm interested in is this intergovernmental line. So let's see if I can zoom in and shit. But this intergovernmental line, something that I've been auditing is intergovernmental federal stimulus. So I believe this is how the city reports its American Rescue Plan funds. And I've been kind of tailing and auditing that because I believe this budget line is more than I think it's like over $160 million that has actually been budgeted from American Rescue Plan dollars. But yeah, this is just detailed information of the city's budget. And then it even goes into the Board of Education. And this is something they file every month with the council. This is a pretty standard comptroller document. Let's keep going through. There's also, just a bunch of stuff about different construction bids. I'm just trying to filter through here some of the more important ones. Well, this one's interesting. The City of Buffalo Fire, they're they're asking for an agreement to enter into MD, so the University of Buffalo, UBMD, emergency medicine. So they're actually entering into contract with them for chief medical officer for the Buffalo Fire Department. So I'm not a firefighter, but I would imagine, right, that's a very physically strenuous and taxing job. So it looks like the city's fire department will actually have the chief medical officer will actually be the MD, and this is a contract that I guess they had put forward with like an RFP. So that's something. There's a solicitation in this document. But yeah, long story short, the UBMD will be the city's chief medical officer. So that's an item also on tomorrow's agenda. There's a couple demolitions here. So 655 Amherst, 227 Waltz, and 183 Jewett are scheduled to be demoed. So there's a couple items from the Department of Permanent Inspections just asking for permission to, I guess, enter into those contracts for demolition. Those may have already been done. A lot of times there's a lag between actual execution of a contract and when it turns up to the council's chambers for actual approval. Human resources, right? These are my friends. I've done some audit work in the human resources. Essentially, the human resources department and the human resources commissioner is systemically violating the city's civil service law by not offering civil service exams for civil service positions. And I filed some items that are kind of just in a waiting pattern. They're on the council agenda but haven't been addressed, and I don't think they're going to be addressed. But I have talked in some previous episodes about my concerns with corruption in the human resources department, because the human resources department, they do a lot of the paperwork and whatnot, right, for hiring and firing people. And I believe that there's some corrosion in the human resources department. I mean, just one example is you have the union president, the local AFS CME 650 president, Tracy Healy, is representing people who are having their rights violated by not having civil service exams, and she's also a city employee that's responsible for offering civil service exams. So I think there's lots of conflict of interest. But they're appointing a senior account clerk typist, Angelica Jones, who I believe is coming from the mayor's office, or the former mayor. And the union contract, right, it looks like they were account clerk typist in the sewer. And yeah, they're just being appointed by Gladys Herndon Hill, who's violating civil service law systemically. I guess she just has the power to enforce the law as she sees fit. Hi, Gladys. And then yeah, there's a lot of items, temporary, provisional, permanent employment. So it looks like the city's ramping up their hiring, bunch of laborers, and just I think as we start to enter into spring. They have quite a bit of appointments, coming in the civil service. A lot of seasonal hourly appointments. I think another interesting thing here is item 25-188. We have concerns with the city's charter revision commission. So I'll open up that item because actually later on, in the agenda, I know in the resolution section, there's actually a local law. Let's see if I can find it for the charter revision. So I'll try to cover that all at once. So the legislation, there's this item 25-103, a local law introducing the establishment of the Charter Revision Commission. So that's one item. So let's see if I can open these both up. Right, so the city's Charter Revision Commission, and I have covered this a little bit, but essentially when our city's mayor vacated his position, So right when Mayor Brown stepped aside, he left a hole or left a vacant position in the mayor's office. Now I think a lot of, I'll call them normies, like got confused of, oh, this is like the United States Constitution of the president, resigns or gets assassinated, and the Constitution prescribes an order of operations for someone to ascend to that office. I think that kind of clouds what's actually going on in the city. So the city's charter is actually, it's different than that. While it does not allow anyone to become, the only way you can become mayor is being elected to be mayor by the people. What the charter does, it doesn't outline who steps up in the position. It essentially just delegates where the powers of the mayor office go while there is no mayor. So while there is no mayor, the council president, according to the charter, acts as the mayor and has the power to act as mayor while there is no mayor. And this causes a lot of downstream effects, because first of all, this isn't how it always was, but essentially the charter also says that as the council president is acting as mayor, they are a non-voting member of the common council. So they are still the common council president. They just don't have a vote anymore on the council. So this got some chatter. This is all downstream of in 2002 when the city's this is all downstream of 2002 when the city of Buffalo had essentially it ended up being a sort of charter revision or vote where essentially it was proposed and adopted, and it came up to an actual vote by the citizens, but it eliminated. The council president used to be an at-large position, so the council president used to be voted on, much like the mayor. It was a citywide election. And at this point in 2002, this was kind of a cost efficiency where they eliminated not only several at-large seats, but the council president seat. So we moved from kind of a mix of council districts with at-large to just pure districts. So right now, the city of Buffalo has 9 different districts, some of which are more gerrymandered than others, but each of those districts kind of acts as like its state of its own boundary, and that each member represents a district on the common council. So when this happened, they never amended the charter to actually prescribe lines of succession, because it made sense that in the old charter, if the mayor was no longer mayor, to have the council president be the acting mayor, because the council president was also elected by the full body of the city of Buffalo, where when they did that and didn't change the charter, we were in this position now where the South District council member, who was only voted in by 1 out of the 9 districts, so 8 of the 9 districts had no say in them being on the council, and also the council president is voted now by the common council members themselves. So we have this member of the council that represents just one district, the South District, is voted onto the council, and then the 9 members determined that they became council presidents. So kind of this warped time of democracy, And this I'll call it a glitch in the charter, then led some common council members to have discussions about actually redoing the charter. So the original intention of this charter review commission was just, I believe, to fix this glitch, but having a charter revision opens up many other changes, because it's not just this change. Essentially, it's like a constitutional convention where the rules of the city could be radically rewritten through a charter. So I think a lot of citizens are excited, and this was something that was kind of hyped up and the council talked about it in November and then kind of got put on the back burner. I had actually applied to be on the charter review commission, because they at one point were putting out RFPs to sit on the council, and I never heard anything. But now the local law tomorrow is actually coming in front of the common council themselves. So we have this local law that establishes a charter review commission and essentially adds a bunch of language to the charter. So this is the actual proposed law, and this is kind of up for vote tomorrow. But we also had a citizen. While this is, I think, this will be approved. That's the plan according to the caucus. But we did have one member write in with their concerns. And the concerns basically were 3. Well, yeah, had a couple complaints. So the one was that it gives the acting mayor, because the acting mayor is simultaneously the acting mayor, so they're the mayor, they're the council president because they actually are the council president, and they're also a South District member. It gives the South District member, acting Mayor Scanlon, the ability to appoint positions as council member, common council, and acting mayor. So let's see the actual law here that they have proposed. I'm going to find in the membership. Right, so this says the Charter Review Commission is composed of 13 members in the elected officials appointees. So the mayor of the city shall appoint 2. Each common council shall appoint 1. The council president shall appoint 1, and the comptroller shall appoint 1. So essentially, because acting Mayor Scanlon is the acting mayor, the council president, and the South, he's able to appoint 4, I believe. 2 is the mayor, 1 is a South District, and 1 is the council president. So one of the complaints is that it just gives the acting mayor too much power, which I believe, especially as you have, he's announced his running for mayor. Also, some complaints about, there's no start or end date, and that's something, I think the original language around the charter had been to have this implemented much sooner. So it's very unclear when or how or if this charter revision commission will be meeting. And then also some complaints and concerns with the process and if it's complied with open meeting law. And I think these are very, very valid concerns. This is coming from the Partnership for the Public Good. I think they are valid concerns, especially with how much excitement this has generated amongst, the politically conscious, if you will call them. But I think it is right. The concern here is that the council establishes this charter commission and then never gives, a true charter review commission, right? They establish this commission, appoint, their cronies to serve on the board, and then that board just literally does some small language changes around appointing vacant council seats and whatnot. And I think this is just an opportunity, right? Opening up the charter for with a commission to review opens up the potential to have radical changes that I think a lot of people would love to see. So I think the concerns around open meetings is valid because we really want this to be open, and it's an opportunity to radically rethink our government. So it doesn't look like I think this item around the complaints is due to be just received and filed, so ignored. But I think it's something we'll all have to keep our eyes on and out and just make sure, because they're masters at kind of just hiding things and keeping things hush hush until the deadline, and then it's too late. So I'm hoping we have enough people. I think we do have enough people paying attention to the charter review because there's some excitement around there of potential. But again, just hoping it doesn't get co-opted by the council into just doing some minor rule changes around, giving the council the ability to appoint to vacant seats. I hope we do get some more radical things like participatory budgeting, right? There could be lots of radical changes to the charter. And again, the charter is kind of the document that guides how City Hall operates. So the ability to change that would be pretty profound. And yeah, that'll be interesting. I think that might be the most interesting item on the charter or on the commission. Let me see what else was on here. So that's so that's on tomorrow's agenda. Let me just filter through here. Let's see, nothing too major here. We've got just a lot of things from the planning board and changes to zoning. It's honestly not my wheelhouse or my area of expertise. So maybe if someone is, be interested to have somebody maybe go into those more because there's a lot of property changes and whatnot. This one's interesting that I just saw this today at the caucus, but Brian Bowman, the Lovejoy, and Halton Pipe, the Ellicott have this item amending and strengthening Buffalo's living wage ordinance. So I have not opened this up. I think it's interesting. So it says, whereas Buffalo's living wage ordinance was passed. So this living wage ordinance, so it talks about the living wage commission, this volunteer city commission tasked with overseeing and enforcing the ordinance. Let's see. So what is it's actually directing? Directs the law department to draft an ordinance amendment to reflect the following changes stated in the whereas outlined in this resolution. So it's proposing amendments to the ordinance that include coverage for out-of-town employees and workers performing mixed duties for Buffalo and other clients. So it looks like they're just kind of, yeah, it'll be interesting. This will be an interesting discussion because I'm not too familiar with the living wage, but essentially there's appears to be a living wage ordinance. They're thinking about having a drafting of a new ordinance to kind of amend that. It looks like this was it was amended in 1999, 2002, and 2017, 2019, just to ensure that certain employees have a living wage, which even 2019 was pre-pandemic, so this is a radical change. That's a conversation I'm interested in. I think this will go to legislation, but very interesting where that conversation goes around a living wage ordinance. And then I'm interested in this one, the addressing cannabis enforcement and tax revenue. I know at last year's budget there was a huge projection for that the cannabis was going to bring lots of revenue to the city. So this says, the city of Buffalo budgeted over $3 million in cannabis tax revenue for fiscal year 24, but has only collected $95,000. So 3% of the budgeted. Just calling out. And I think the cannabis revenue, that was a big thing. That essentially the city hall is over projected revenue from cannabis revenue, and just one of many things that the city's over budgeting for, and setting unrealistic targets. So this is just calling on to engage in review with more stringent cannabis revenue. Then there's a bunch of these bonds for different things. So there's a bunch of these at the end of just, I think, putting out bonds for different items. So that's kind of a high-level overview, I guess. The biggest thing is that, again, the capital budget that I touched on to begin with. And, I think the Charter Revision Commission, that's interesting discussion that I expect that to be adopted tomorrow. And then, who knows, we may or may not hear things. But if that forms the commission, then there's an opportunity to change the commission. Those are some of the big things. So that meeting will happen tomorrow, Tuesday at 2 p.m. You can watch that in the council chambers or at Buffalo CC on their Facebook page. So that's tomorrow. So that's kind of the council meeting. Another item I wanted to talk on was BURA. So the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency's loan committee is holding a meeting on Thursday, February 6th at 9:30 a.m. in City Hall. And I believe that one of the main items on that meeting agenda for the loan committee will be the Bray Miller market and discussions around loan forgiveness for the Bray Miller market. So to bring those people up to speed that might not be familiar, the city of Buffalo engaged in an economic development strategy where they essentially did like an RFP for a developer to build a grocery store downtown. So the city kind of put out this request to have developers come in and build a grocery store. So this grocery store is right downtown. And this was ultimately Bray Miller agreed to become a downtown grocery store. And this was before the pandemic. So they built this grocery store, and right, there's a reason there was no grocery stores. There's just really downtown is there's not really a market to support it. But this was kind of the city's, top-down strategy. So, and then the Braymiller market just struggled downtown. So it was probably a combination of, yes, some changing economic factors like declining workers working downtown. I think that's what you often hear the administration and City Hall echo, is that it was solely due to the pandemic, which is true. There's some truth to that, but also the Braymiller just seemed like a poor fit to begin with. I think they have a location in the South Towns, maybe in Hamburg, in the village of Hamburg, but I know just from my personal experience going there, all the items were very expensive and seemed to be a little priced out for a supermarket. I think there was just some really novelty items that had a high sticker shock. And my experience was that the service wasn't too good. You'd go into like the deli shop and you could stand there for a half an hour and not really get good service. But essentially, too, as it became apparent that wasn't going so well, the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency gave a $500,000 loan to Braymiller to keep the business afloat, because City Hall was kind of doubling down on this grocery store. And in that contract, they had certain loan forgiveness. So there was an item around having a business marketing plan, having certain hiring targets for the next year. And then one was also the agreement that the store would remain operational for another 2 years. So I believe Thursday at the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency, BURA and the administration is going to say that Braymiller hit all their targets and they get to keep their money, which is, I think, again, a City Hall partial truth, which I do believe they hit some of their hiring targets, and I'm sure they had a business marketing plan. But it's very black and white that they did not keep their store open for two years, right? They closed after only 1 year. So just on that alone, that they didn't remain operational, the city of Buffalo could, and I believe I'm of the opinion that they should hold Braymiller accountable and not forgive that loan and make Braymiller pay that money back, because ultimately they didn't fulfill the obligations of the contract. And this is the BURA site. So if you go to the BuffaloUrbanRenewal.com, they have this little scroll bar that says the Bureau Loan Committee will be held February 6, 2025 in room 901 in Buffalo City Hall at 9:30. But I'm recording this on Monday, so I think today's the 3rd, but you can't actually find an agenda online. So this is the BURA, right? And if you you go to BURA Archive Board Agendas and Minutes, and it brings up 2022, which is 3 years ago now. So not good information, but I have some information to think that right in here is the loan committee button. If we click on this, the last one was canceled, but yeah, it just says there's a meeting, but there's no publicly posted agenda. And actually, there's also some other concerning things with BURA. Like if you go on this audit committee, it just says there's no audit committees in 23, no audit committees in 22, no audit committees in 21. So I don't know when the last time the BURA's audit committee, and even some of this information around governance, right? It just, a lot of this information is not updated. And I think, right, BURA, what is BURA? Why should we even care? So the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency, even as someone that worked in City Hall, I don't fully understand what they are. Essentially, they're like an authority, and it's kind of like an economic development branch of City Hall, right? They're not City Hall, but yet, all their employees, I think, work in City Hall. Their employees have Buffalo, New York email addresses. So they're kind of, from my understanding, this agency that City Hall can use to kind of get around some of the maybe requirements, or right to kind of sometimes use an authority that's not City Hall to have public funds. And I know BURA, they're responsible for like managing the city's community development block grants. So they're kind of this kind of bizarre fiscal arm of City Hall, where they're kind of like another extension of the mayor's office of strategic planning. So they're not City Hall, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, they are. So, and I know lots of the council members the city council members are members of the board. So there's this weird kind of Venn diagram where they definitely overlap with City Hall. And I know just a little. I know there is a lot of kind of concerns, corruption concerns, and just oversight. I mean, you can see from their website they just don't have any information, up to date information, which I'm optimistic maybe with the new administration this won't be good. But I think again too, something I didn't cover last week. That was this last week. BURA had this special meeting where they called a special meeting. Where they entered into this memorandum agreement. So this was President Trump had put this temporary freeze, or there's this rumored temporary freeze on federal funding. So City Hall really in BURA they scurried to come up with this agreement where essentially my understanding is they forwarded City Hall funds that BURA was going to be responsible for and just essentially gave them money so that it wouldn't get clawed back. But I guess I'm concerned with that item too because maybe there could be some abuse of power concerns where maybe they have this new power where they can, administer funds. But yeah, just something I'm concerned about. And I think we should have more kind of oversight of BURA. So I encourage everyone to visit or at least report, or I'll report on the BURA meeting on Thursday. Because I believe right now the policy of the administration is to just forgive this BURA loan, kind of make it go away, partly because it's just a bad look on their part, right? They engage in this multi-year top-down economic strategy of we're gonna build a grocery store because we want a grocery store, and then it kind of was a massive flop. And I know Bray Miller Market did take a risk, right, which you appreciate, taking a risk to build a downtown store when nobody else did, but that money also, it's especially with the fiscal cliff we're facing, it just really we can no longer afford to just kind of, excuse my French, but piss money away, whether that's the Bray Miller funds, whether that's the city's $2.2 million SaaS analytics contract. There's really just no money to just piss away without, careful oversight. So I do hope, and technically they don't need to forgive the loan. So I'm hoping we can get some public pressure and that maybe the city of Buffalo can get the money back, because that money could have been better spent. And especially when we have large pockets of the city that have food deserts, that money just could have been better spent. And $500,000, if you got that money back, could potentially go to fund some other grocery stores, not just in downtown, but in other parts of our city that don't have a grocery store. So that's Thursday, the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency. So I talked about City Hall, talked about BURA. Now I want to kind of maybe do a lighter take on the Buffalo Bills salary cap. And I think as Buffalo DOGE, the Buffalo Department of Government Efficiency, right, the Buffalo Bills, they got one of the largest, bailout or subsidies for their new stadium, which they're building in Orchard Park. But they got, I think, over $850 million from the state and the county. So any matters of the bills are government matters. And I think, right, there's a quote, bread and circuses. And I think the circuses kind of get mocked as like this, just fluff that you don't really need, right? You need bread to survive. You need food to survive, but the circus is just kind of a joke. But I think I've taken that quote more seriously of like, what good is the bread without the circus, and what good is the circus without bread? So I wanted to audit a little bit of the salary cap, and I think I've been reflecting on the Bills, right, their loss to the Chiefs, and I think one of the big things, and not to blame the loss on anyone, but right, when you get to that level, you need to, something's got to change, right? It's just not good enough. And I think even before I critique, I think the Bills' current regime of Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, right? It's very clear that they are an elite duo, an elite coach GM duo. They've had at this point sustained success. We've won a playoff game 5 years in a row, which not many other teams can say. So it's very clear we are an elite operation. But I think when you get to that level of right, you are an elite, you're in the Final Four, but you're not the Super Bowl. Just the bar raises, and I think something I've been kind of reflecting on is this past loss feels like it is on Brandon Bean. Like he kind of bears, I think, the majority of the responsibility. Just our roster outside of Josh Allen just isn't good enough. And that's not to say Brandon Bean's a bad GM. He's not. He's an excellent GM. He's built our team. He's found lots of solid players in the late rounds, whether it's a Matt Milano, a Christian Benford, Terrell Bernard, lots of late round picks. But I think one area where this regime has struggled is finding like elite game changing players. I mean, they found Josh Allen, but outside of that, we really don't have any kind of elite players. And I think when you're comparing yourselves to the Kansas City Chiefs, the margin, it's not good to have lots of good players on your roster. You need game-changing players on your roster, and I think that's just where the current regime is falling short when you match them up against the Chiefs. And I think that game was pretty apparent. I think the draft where we drafted Kaiir Elam and the Chiefs got Trent McDuffie 2 picks before. That's just one example of we both drafted cornerbacks. The Chiefs got an All-Pro, and we got what is looking to be like a bust, which is when the difference in a game is 3 points. One team having an elite cornerback, another one having a cornerback that can't cover anyone. That makes the difference. So very fine margins, but I think a lot of this past loss, I feel like maybe last year was on McDermott for coaching, but this year feels like McDermott maximized the roster we had, and I think this offseason is all about getting elite players. And I think there was some exciting news that Myles Garrett, who's an all-pro defensive end from the Browns, demanded a trade. And I think there's lots of chatter in the Twitter and Reddit sphere that we should go out and get Myles Garrett. And I think I'm in full agreement of that. I think we kind of need like the Josh Allen of our defense, a guy that scares the other team and can wreck games and change games. And I think he's very much almost exactly what we need. And I would be willing to not mortgage the future, but I think the rumored asking price now is 2 first-round picks plus some more. And I think if that's the price, if I were Bean, I would not even hesitate to move that, because I think we are that close. And I think having a game-changing defensive lineman would we've been one of the areas that the regime hasn't been able to build is the offense or the defensive line. So even since I think the first AFC Championship game where it was just clear our defensive line wasn't good enough, we've been investing draft capital, so high draft picks. We've drafted Rousseau in the first round, Boogie Basham in the second round, Apinaza in the second round. So we've invested lots of draft capital, and also the Von Miller signing. We went out and signed this massive free agent, Von Miller, and so there's been a lot of investments in the defensive line, but none of them have really had the impact that I think was the hope, because ultimately we need an elite lineman, and that we just don't have. The Chiefs have Chris Jones, and we don't really have that type of player on our defensive line. It feels like every time we play the Chiefs, it's hard for us to move the ball, but it's easier for them to move the ball, right? And then part of that is the Chiefs and Mahomes and Reed, but part of it is just our inability to really get pressure or even to really make it tough for them to gain yards. So I think that's one area I'd love to see them invest. So I did want to take a look at our cap situation. I think as we enter the playoffs or enter the offseason, just being aware of the salary cap, because I know it's something that's real, but it's also something that's seemed to be fake. But there are it's not completely fake. Let's see if I can get a good zoom here. So yeah, here's our draft situation. You see right at the top here, we've got Josh Allen, who's taking up 15% of the cap, which sounds like a lot, and it is, but it really, when you got a quarterback that's that good, it's kind of not worth it. And I think even when you look at roster construction here, just Von Miller making up almost 9% of the cap, 36 years old is just not good enough. If you're having a guy make that much of your cap, he's got to be an impact player. And unfortunately, I mean, it might have been the ACL injury, but just didn't have kind of the impact that we were hoping. And even Ed Oliver, he's making $20 million a year. He's a good player, right? He's a good defensive lineman, but unfortunately, right when you're comparing yourselves against the Chiefs and the elites, you need more than just good. You need like a game breaker. You need a borderline Hall of Fame player if he's going to making up that much of your cap. Deion Dawkins, I think, is right. He's a left tackle. It's a premium position. He's elite. He's making $20 million, but I'm fine with the production you get for that cost there. Matt Milano at almost $16 million. This one's again, when he's on, he's an elite, but unfortunately just dealt with injuries. So when you have an injury to that position, it's just hard to kind of recover. And then you kind of get these other positions where lots of 13, 14, $9 million, which are okay. I don't think you're going to, right? These are kind of just standard salaries, but I think really we need to examine the top portion of the Bills' salary structure. And again, when you have $43 million here to Oliver and Von Miller, so two linemen making up 15% of your cap, you need those two guys to be elite, and I think they just haven't kind of reached the bar that they need to. Again, they've been good. I think Von Miller has been disappointing, but if you want to be a Super Bowl contender, ideally you'd have this money. $43 million in cap would be going to an elite Josh Allen type lineman, which just hasn't been the case, unfortunately. So yeah, I think even with the Myles Garrett, and there's a lot of, I think, creative stuff. But I think what I'd love to see Bean do is just go out, get Myles Garrett, and just make it work. I think if you have two elite guys, you could kind of have the rest of the roster be decent. I think that's what Bean's proven. He can get really good players kind of in mid to later rounds. So I'd love to even maybe, especially after a few of our first round picks have been kind of busts, I'd love to see us adopt like a strategy that the Rams had, where they just would say, I think the exact meme is F them picks, but they would just trade their draft picks for established talent. I think that's the move I'd love to see the Bills move towards, just kind of stack a bunch of later round picks in the later rounds, use those to fill the roster out, and especially you've proven you can get good players in the later rounds. So keep those later picks, trade down, accumulate more picks, but then I'd love to see them flip high picks, first and second round picks, into proven players that can play. I think right, the advantage of the first and second round is you can get elite talent and have them at manageable cap hits. But that's if you're drafting well, right? If you hit on a good offensive or defensive lineman in the first round, you get that guy on a cap controlled contract for a few years, and it really helps your salary cap. But we just haven't really proven that we can identify and hit those guys. I think our last first round picks have been, right, again, okay to disappointing. And when you're at the tier where we are, where you're looking to win a Super Bowl, not just make the playoffs, but actually win a Super Bowl, just the scrutiny brings you to a whole other level. And I think it's just right. I'm not saying the Bills management is bad. They're not. I think they're clearly elite, but right, when examining them against the Chiefs, who are right the cream of the crop, they leave a lot to be desired. So, for example, let's just look at the Chiefs' next roster and how they're built. Right, so they have Patrick Mahomes at the top. I mean, the $66 million contract, but then look, they got Chris Jones too. So they got these two guys making massive money, but both those guys are elite. Right, they've got two kind of cornerstones at both sides of the roster. And the thing that's crazy about the Chiefs salary cap is just look how many guys they have. They got 5 guys making $20 million-ish around. But I would say, I don't know Jawan Taylor, if he's good. I think I've heard that he's maybe disappointed. But look, they've got, Mahomes, Chris Jones, Joe Thuney, who's an elite lineman, and Travis Kelce, who's a Hall of Fame tight end. So you've got these 5 guys all making a ton of money, but all relatively, I don't know about this Jawan Taylor, but like all, and then even Creed Humphrey's elite. So you have these guys at the top of the roster that are all really elite players. It's just kind of crazy how top heavy they are. They have a few players making so much money, and then you get down the roster and you're very quickly into the, $4 to $5 million range. So they kind of just have their whole roster, just a bunch of guys that all kind of work. But I think it just speaks to the strategy of the Chiefs are very top heavy with elite players, and then just a bunch of guys making mid contracts. It's just a different strategy than us, right? They've got 4 guys making over $25 million. I think we only have one. We only have Allen. So it's kind of right. Not saying the Chiefs are perfect, but yeah, we only have one guy making $25 million. They have 4. So I think that just comes to architecture of the team, and I think that's I think it's just kind of where we have to grow and improve to be ready Super Bowl champions. We need these guys to at the top of the roster to be elite producers, and just so far haven't really gotten the output that you need to get over the hump here. So it's a little bit of Buffalo Bills salary cap analysis. So obviously with the Bills getting nearly $1 billion in taxpayer money, we need to be concerned with Bills' efficiency of roster, because it's the circus to our bread. And that's kind of we'll see. I think I'll get a little deeper into maybe some Bills salary cap stuff over the regular season, but just wanted to take a look at their salary cap. So we got 5 minutes here. So I hope you've enjoyed kind of so far some of the auditing. So kind of to recap, I talked about the Buffalo Common Council, Buffalo Urban Renewal, and then Buffalo Bills. I think with the last 5 minutes, I wanted to focus on, let's talk about the mayor's race. So I think there's some reporting in the Investigative Post this past week, just talking about how at the mayoral ECDC candidates forum, acting Mayor Scanlon, when he was asked a question about running as a Republican, the Investigative Post reported that he was kind of, I don't know what their exact word, but he was like a waffling, or kind of gave an unclear answer. And then also you had the Erie County Democratic Committee chairman, Jeremy Zellner, came out and say that he unequivocally said no to that question. So Mark Polenkars, who is the county executive, he asked them a question saying, with the Trump regime, would any of the 8 candidates, would you be willing to accept a conservative Republican line? And it started as a yes/no question. So I think the controversy was around Jeremy Zellner's original statement saying that he unequivocally said no, the Investigative Post saying that was not true and that he waffled. And I think I just wanted to speak briefly on my perception. So I was at the event, and I call myself the acting Fillmore 16 committeeman, because I was vanquished to actually be the committeeman for that district. But as the acting member and as a viewer of it there, I was actually in the room, and I did record. I did record the forum. I did not leak it. I'm not the one that leaked it to Jeff Kelly at Investigative Post, but I did record it for my own record, and I went back and listened to it, and it feels like Jeremy Zellner, the commissioner, and the Investigative Post they're both saying the truth, which is weird. They're kind of in this weird spot. So I wanted to provide my own remarks or perceptions of what happened. So from my perception after reviewing my own recording, what appears to happen is that Polenkars asked the question, will you support Republican or conservative line if you don't get the endorsement? It started as a very blunt yes/no. So during the first round, acting Mayor Scanlon did say no. He unequivocally said no, and then it moved down the line. And then Senator Sean Ryan started kind of pontificating about, just about his opponent and whatnot and what was going on. So then it got into this long, winded question. And then because one candidate didn't answer yes or no, because they kind of started, spewing a bunch of stuff, they then went back in line and asked each candidate to provide a more detailed response. And at that point, that is when acting Mayor Chris Scanlon kind of waffled and said, I'm here seeking the Democratic Party support, and I will work to that end. So it seems, right, obviously I would expect Jeremy Zellner to put the spin on it that he said unequivocally no, because that looks good for the Democrat, and he did, it's partially true. He did unequivocally said no. It does seem a little untrue for the Investigative Post to report that he did waffle, because while he also did say no the first time around. So it does feel like this weird kind of gray area where you have two parties online that are, yelling at each other about the truth. And the truth is that the truth is somewhere more in a gray area of it's yes to both. So those are kind of my thoughts, and that's just my understanding based on my own perceptions and me reviewing my own personal recording that I did not leak. Is that they're both reporting, and I think it's disappointing in one end. It's great that the Democratic Party is holding a forum, which I guess they usually don't, but it's also disappointing, and the critique definitely comes from the investigative post of, hey, why isn't this forum public? And I think right now the field's been whittled to 4 candidates that will go back to the final ECDC forum, and then candidates will be able to start petitioning. It does feel, it does kind of feel like this this kind of weird race where the party insiders, if you will, the committee members who are essentially the insiders, are going to choose a candidate before petitioning begins, which I guess it's part of the game. So we'll see what happens there. But I just wanted to kind of provide some clarifying comments that both Chairman Zellner and the investigative post, they're both right and they're both wrong. But both of them seem entrenched in their side. So that's a little audit on the mayor's race. And I wanted to thank anybody and everybody for tuning in. And this was a show of the Buffalo Doge show. So with that, I guess I'll sing it out with Austin the Auditor. So I am Austin the Auditor, and I guess I'm going to try to find every nickel that they stole, because they steal a lot of nickels. So until next time, thanks for tuning in. This is the Buffalo Doge Show.